On today's episode of Uncommon Sense, we speak with President of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton, Dale Ahlquist. We'll be talking about the upcoming Chesterton Conference in Minneapolis this summer and getting updates on what the Society has been up to lately. All that and more on this episode of Uncommon Sense. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Uncommon Sense. My name is Joe Grabowski, one of the hosts here, and I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Gretelyn Darkey. Hi, Gretelyn.
Hi there, Joe.
And we are very honored today to have with us the president of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton, the man himself, Dale Ahlquist. Hi, Dale. How are you?
Hello there, Joe. Hello, Gretelyn. God bless you both.
Thank you. God bless you. So, Dale, I was hoping you could maybe just update us on kind of how the Society is doing, if there's anything new that we should be aware of as members and supporters of the Society, and maybe if you have any comments on big things coming up apart from the Chesterton Conference in the summer, which we'll get to.
Well, our big story continues to be the growth of the Chesterton Schools Network. It's just an incredible phenomenon. It's an amazing thing to be part of. I have just returned from 3 weeks in a row of traveling to Chesterton galas around the country. I've gone to 4 galas in 3 weeks. I've been to Portland, Oregon, Salt Lake City, Omaha, Nebraska, and Wichita Falls, Texas. Next week, I'm in Orlando for their Chesterton Academy Gala, and these are happening all over the country right now. My good friend Joseph Pierce spoke at a Chesterton Gala this last weekend, and because I had a conflict of schedule, I couldn't be at the one in Maryland because of it being a different one, but they got a pretty good backup speaker. They got Dr. Peter Kraft to be their speaker. So they're doing really well. The excitement at all these schools is absolutely palpable, and you could beam each group up and beam it down in a different location and switch the two groups around, and they'd be exactly the same, because these are all such like-minded folks, parents who are trying to take the education of their children into their own hands, and we've shown them how to start a school, and we have various levels of support from the community, from the church, and from outsiders. So it's such an exciting thing to be a part of, and expect more news about the Chesterton Schools Network in the future here.
Absolutely. And Wichita Falls, funny, that's not necessarily a big place on the map, but I'm very familiar with it because I spent about half a year, a little more, there at Shepherd Air Force Base to do my advanced training when I was in the Air National Guard. So quite a little town, kind of a one stoplight town, but that just goes to show that these academies are popping up all over the place.
Yeah, in Oregon, there's two more starting there, so there will be 4 Chesterton academies in the state of Oregon, which is not exactly a Catholic stronghold or even a Christian stronghold. It's a very unchurched state. And start one in Portland, the one that's already been there for about 5 years down at Mount Angel, but there's going to be one starting in Corvallis, where Oregon State University is, and there's no Catholic high schools in that area, so it's going to be a real wonderful presence. And then even farther down southern in Oregon, in what they call Rogue Valley near Medford. And I hope to visit all these things frequently because Oregon's a beautiful state.
It is indeed.
Wonderful that though we say it's an unchurched state, but it seems like they're trying to bring it there. So that's great.
People are hungry for the truth in places where the truth isn't very present. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As you say, Dale, we will, I think, have exciting news about the Chesterton Schools Network to share with our supporters, maybe at the conference, and certainly later this summer. I just got back from a conference myself on, Catholic liberal arts education, and even there, it was definitely discernible that even amongst kind of stakeholders and leaders in the Catholic classical education movement, the Chesterton Schools network has really stepped to the fore and is regarded as kind of the leader in the high school level of classical Catholic liberal arts education. And that's just really exciting that along with that and the growing interest in that movement, Chesterton is getting out there and getting to these young people as well.
Yeah, it's a way of evangelization that we never dreamed was going to happen, and God has really placed something wonderful in our laps here.
Absolutely.
Beautiful, yeah.
So turning then to the more immediate happenings this summer, Dale, we have our wonderful conference coming up, and excitement has definitely been building on that. We sold out all our early bird phase tickets quite early, and we still have registrations trickling in. We will kind of make a proper ad for the conference later in our talk, but just remind the viewers and listeners they can go to chesterton.org/conference. But maybe give us an update on kind of the scope of the conference this year, the theme, Dale, and why that theme, the Jugglers of God, Chesterton and St. Francis.
So it is the 100th anniversary of Chesterton's book on St. Francis of Assisi. It's the first book that he wrote after his conversion. Last year we celebrated the 100th anniversary of Chesterton's conversion. So this is the natural next step. And it's great because every conference for the foreseeable future will be the 100th anniversary of something from Chesterton's life. And the St. Francis, of course, was a very important figure in Chesterton's own life. He had a devotion to St. Francis long before his conversion. He said that Francis was never a stranger to him. And that speaks highly of this saint. He's truly a universal saint that non-Catholics are very drawn to. And of course, they're drawn to him because he seems to represent a nature lover. And of course, Chesterton corrects that or amends that image very succinctly. But the whole point is Chesterton's devotion to him is because he sees Francis as this juggler of God, le jongleur de Dieu, the joker of God, the clown of God, the fool of God, but also the tumbler of God, the juggler. All those are correct translations of that chapter title in Chesterton's book. So we're going to explore the different translations of it. But the point is, Chesterton himself is also that juggler, that fool, that clown for Christ.
Beautiful. I know in the book, Chesterton really expands, like you said, he kind of knocks down that one-dimensional view of Francis as just a nature lover. But he does really point to him as a lover, and I think we're gonna touch on that too a little bit. So that'll be good. Do you want to tell our listeners who our main speaker is besides yourself this year?
Besides yourself, yeah. In addition to me being a speaker who has often spoken at these conferences, I have spoken at one or two conferences in the past, but and it's always a great joy. But we're just delighted and thrilled that Bishop Robert Barron is going to be our keynote speaker. The Pope cleverly moved Bishop Barron to Minnesota within the last year, and he just has to drive up the road a bit. We're the Archdiocese of the Twin Cities is just north of his diocese in southern Minnesota, so he doesn't have far to come. You will both recall that we tried to get Bishop Barron to our conference back when it was in your state of Pennsylvania, and he was all set to come, but Slippery Rock was a little too far off the base. It was, too far from Pittsburgh to be considered close, and he was coming from at that point Santa Barbara, and the trip would have been very long. And he wasn't even the one who ixtated it. It was one of the managers at Word on Fire said, "No, he can't really come to that conference." This is after they'd agreed to come. So he zoomed in, and we had the premiere of the his episode from
Pivotal players.
the
Yeah.
pivotal players, and the episode on Chesterton that he did, which was very exciting. We had a back and forth talking to his disembodied head up on the screen, but this time we will have him in the flesh, and his love for Chesterton is absolutely wears it on his sleeve.
Hmm.
Just a great supporter of us over the years, but now we'll have him to ourselves for that evening at the opening night on Thursday, July 27th.
Very exciting. We did it backward. We did the virtual reality version first, and now we're doing the real life version. So
Yeah, that's right.
come and see him. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and it's very exciting, in particular, to hear him speak on this topic because I think that Bishop Barron, um, I listen to a lot of his podcasts and things, and kind of the school of that ressourcement communio tradition that he comes out of, and is very much expert in. Uh, and you think of writers like Hans Urs von Balthasar, they really focus on how beauty, um, and how creation uplifts the soul, and that's a very kind of Franciscan idea and theme. And Bishop Barron himself speaks about just the beauty of Notre Dame Cathedral, for example, in Paris, which thank God is being restored and not recavated as was feared after the fire. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I'm really excited. I think it's a lot of confluence happening at this year's conference.
Absolutely. Confluence is a perfect word.
Yeah. So, what other highlights, Dale, from the schedule would you like to point out? I think Bishop Barron has gotten certainly a lot of our press when we've put out news about the conference so far, but people might not be familiar with some of the other speakers.
Yeah, and I have to say it's a conference full of highlights. And yeah, let's point out some of these great speakers we have. So on we start everything off on Thursday evening, but then Friday morning we have two great speakers that morning. The daughter of our great late friend Stratford Caldecott, Teresa Caldecott Cialini, will be talking about another angle on Francis and Chesterton and the Inklings. So that promises to be a fine talk, and she speaks very good English with a proper English accent, unlike Joseph Pierce. and then uh, and then we'll also have a talk that it's surprising that it's taken us this long after many conferences to finally have a talk on Russell Kirk and G.K. Chesterton. Russell Kirk, great American scholar who definitely was a Chestertonian. He was actually on the original board of the first Chesterton Society that founded the Chesterton Review, and he's a giant intellect in American history in his own right. But it's going to be great putting together Kirk and Chesterton, and that's Alan Cornett is the speaker on that. He's a Kirk scholar, and he also I got to know him better last fall when he was the co-leader of a wonderful cultural debris tour that I took to Genoa, Italy, with our board member Tom Ruby and my wife and my son Adrian. So he's a wonderful gentleman, and he'll be giving that talk.
You can actually go back in time on our YouTube channel and see our interview with Alan. It was very interesting, very fun. Get yourself a little preview of that talk. It's going to be great.
And then in the afternoon, we are 90% sure that Geir Hostas will be with us in the flesh. But if for some reason he can't be with us in the flesh, he will be. We'll Zoom him in, because one of the great accomplishments and biggest pieces of news of this last year was the publishing of the bibliography of Chesterton. 3 volumes, 1,200 pages, a lifetime of research by Geir, and I was the happy fellow traveler as I assisted him on that. Just an incredible accomplishment, and when he presents this uh, his overview of the bibliography of Chesterton's incredible achievement as a writer, it'll just blow your mind. It will blow your mind. And not only Chesterton's achievement, but what Gere achieved in creating this bibliography. It's the best bibliography ever published in history. It's just it's an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah.
So that is a not to be missed session.
Mm.
And then Joe, I think I want you to talk about the next one.
Sure. So that second afternoon on Friday, following Gear's presentation, we'll have a kind of special panel that I've helped put together. Um, Followers, viewers, and listeners who follow our Instagram might have seen posts of John Walker dressed as G.K. Chesterton at the opening of Chesterton and Co. Cigars in Steubenville. And this is a new cigar store that some local guys got together and decided, um, in one case, I believe, to like divest themselves of their 401k, cash it out, and instead invest locally, buying a brick and mortar local building and building something for the community, something that could be a gathering space, and revitalizing 4th Street, which is the main street downtown there. This is part of kind of an ongoing process of localism lived and really embodying the principles of localism that come out in Chesterton's writing and more broadly in Catholic social teaching. And so, in addition to two of the co owners of Chesterton and Co. Cigars, we also have Jacob Imam, who, again, our longtime listeners will know from the previous episode Gretelyn and I did with him. He is one of the co founders and co editors of New Polity, and he's also kind of the force behind a lot of this revitalization that's going on in Steubenville, the thought leader, one of the thought leaders, as it were, of what's happening there. And so he's opening a new initiative in Steubenville, or helping to open a 2-year degree granting trade school program, which will teach people not only, great books in liberal arts and philosophy and theology of work, but also how to work and how to literally create things with your hands, do things like carpentry skills and A-framing and things like that. So it's a really cool, exciting panel, and I think it's just a different take on the classic ideas of distributism or localism that maybe longtime conference attendees will be familiar with. This is a new way of presenting that material.
That's very exciting. If that doesn't pull them in, a Chesterton cigar company, come on.
Yeah, and I understand that they might be bringing some provisions for the afterglow as well. So that's just another reason to show up.
it does scream afterglow, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Well, our other speaker that afternoon will be Brent Forrest, who former board member of the Chesterton Society, but he's spoken at our conference before. He spoke at our famous virtual conference during the COVID shutdown and gave a marvelous talk. And he's a former magician, but of course he's billing himself as a failed animal trainer. That's and I can attest to the fact personally that he is a failed animal trainer. But I live to tell about it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you put your head in the lion's mouth, or?
Well, it was a beast much more ferocious than a mere lion. It was his dog. That was, you've heard of Cerberus, the hellhound, the 3-headed thing. Well, this made his dog made Cerberus look like a happy puppy. Okay. So. Whatever he says is going to be funny, but he's got a great theme he's going to be talking about failure. He was a professional magician for many years and a performer, but then he was a financial planner, and I would have to say he did not fail as that. He was able to retire and sell his company to his employees, and he's retired now in Vero Beach, Florida, where he is helping to start a Chesterton Academy there. Here's a man with no school-age children, and he is the driving force for starting Chesterton Academy in Vero Beach, Florida.
Yeah, and already, in the schedule, I think you can kind of see the through line of the Franciscan St. Francis of Assisi fools for Christ, right? Failure in the world's eyes,
Yeah.
not being failure in the divine economy, like
Mm.
with with the economic considerations of the panel previously, and here Brent speaking about um, yeah, the wisdom of or the foolishness of God being wiser than the wisdom of men. I think it's and Dale, in our planning meetings for the conference, I think that we sometimes even ourselves fail to realize the other person involved in that situation, who is the Holy Spirit, because we
Amen.
don't necessarily plan these themes to work as congruously as they do, and yet it happens, and it's just a beautiful thing to see.
It absolutely is. It really is remarkable how, in spite of us, these things come together so well.
When Vicky and I used to go together to the Vicky Darkey and I used to go to the conference together, we used to guess what is the actual theme. We would take our time and be like, oh, maybe it's this. No, doesn't seem like it. And by the end, something was always clear, and it was absolutely the Holy Spirit every single
That's
time.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, really beautiful.
So turning to the evening, then we have John Walker presenting on Chesterton and Saint Francis, and of course, I think you know, again, podcast listeners can hear a little bit about that going back to his episode where he spoke about that. I'm very excited. He's crafting a new script, new presentation for the conference, so it's nothing you've seen before, even if you have caught John's show on EWTN. Um, but after that, Dale, we have what I think will be another huge highlight of the conference, the Troubadours live, and maybe fill us in about, if there is a plan, what that is for
Yeah.
that.
If there is a plan, what is it?
Yeah.
We do have all the troubadours showing up, that's the plan right now, and we've just had a very enjoyable sojourn together. These four other gentlemen and myself, Christopher Check of Catholic Answers, William Fahey, president of St. Thomas More College, and Thomas More College of the Liberal Arts is the correct title. The great Joseph Pierce, and then Daniel Kerr, who will be giving a solo talk on Saturday. So we started doing it during the COVID shutdown. It was a way of getting people together. We called it the Prairie Troubadour Summit, and we just started calling ourselves the Troubadours, which is such a Franciscan idea for Chesterton's book on Saint
Mm-hmm.
Francis,
Yeah.
that Saint Francis was the troubadour of God, and they are. We talk about poetry and art and beauty in many of our discussions together, but we always bring in a good, strong Catholic perspective that just isn't shared anywhere else, and our discussions are always lively. We have great chemistry between the five of us. Last year's session was a big hit when we each did some poetry. We poetry around the fireside without a fireside, and so we're going to do something very Franciscan, and everybody will have to come to find out what it is.
to be revealed. And if again, we've interviewed a couple of these guys already, and so far they all seem to say too that they're just this is a place where they've found some real friendship, and they're really grateful for that. And you can tell when you see everybody up on stage that this is just kind of a group of friends, and you really feel like you're looking in on the Inklings or something like that. It's very special.
Yeah, that's great. Well, interesting enough, so after we're done speaking on Friday evening, there will be an afterglow, as there will be every night. And then immediately following the afterglow will be the morning session. and, uh,
Yep.
and, and it's going to be amazing because two of the troubadours will be the speakers on Saturday morning, and that'll be Joseph Pierce, who is everyone. He's a standard conference speaker. We're thrilled to have him every year, and he'll be talking about there's a great section of the book in the St. Francis book called "The World St. Francis Found," which is kind of the introduction, and Chesterton's explanation of the fall of the Roman Empire and the Dark Ages is absolutely unique. I've never seen anything else like it in all of scholarship and literature. And so he'll be talking about that aspect of it. Joseph has become, in addition to a great literary critic and biographer, a great historian, and he's just come out with a book on the history of Europe. What's that book called, Joseph? Joe, what is that? It's the history of his newest book. It's a history of something or other. I have it here in my study, and then followed is Dan Kerr talking about how the liturgical year just reveals the beauty of God's creation. We felt like geniuses when we came up with this subject for Dan Kerr to talk about. He's the perfect one to talk about. He started a Catholic boys boarding school in Fort Scott, Kansas, where these guys live close to the land. In addition to a classical education, they are taking care of pigs and cows and sheep and chickens, and they're close to the land and close to God's creation. And Dan's a great thinker and a great gentleman and very eloquent, and that'll be a great talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just by the way, this is just a free plug for Dan. If you look at that website or Google it, St. Martin's Academy, it's a beautiful website. I kind of just sometimes just go to that website for a moment of zen in my day. Like, it's just, you see this beautiful landscape and everything, but then you look at the pictures of the feasts that they have, and I think they had a Burns night with the poetry of Robert Burns, and there's guys dressed in sort of what appear to be Scottish peasant garb bringing out a haggis, which might not be to everybody's tastes, but he really does embody this theme that he'll be speaking about. They're at the farm with the living out of the liturgical year and following creation through the seasons. So
there'll be one other speaker that morning, and he's worth getting up for as well. And that's Tom Martin, who just retired as a professor of philosophy at the University of Nebraska at Kearney. He generally speaks every other year at our conferences. And that goes back many years. In fact, next to me, I would say he's been to the most Chesterton conferences after I have. I met him when we started having the conferences back in Milwaukee, 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And Tom is he's an imposing figure. Okay, if those who haven't met him, he's about 6'5", would you say?
Yeah,
snowy white hair and beard.
Yeah,
he is a philosopher to the depths, and with his deep voice and his clear thinking, he just absolutely commands your attention. And he's a great lover of things Orthodox in terms of Eastern Orthodox. He's a great lover of Dostoevsky and also of Solzhenitsyn. He's going to be talking about Chesterton and Solzhenitsyn, what they saw in America. That promises to be a very stimulating talk. That'll be better than a cup of coffee in the morning on Saturday.
Yeah, as some of our listeners may recall, we just interviewed him. It was really rich.
Yeah.
I was like, this is too much chocolate cake for 30 minutes. It was wonderful, but it was, wow. Don't miss his talk. It's like Dale said, it's worth getting up for.
And then we have some breakout sessions in the afternoon on Saturday. And Susan Suture was a big hit last year at the conference, talking about motherhood.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, she's become a favorite columnist
Mm.
in the Gilbert magazine with her domestic empress column. But she'll be talking about practical localism, which the most local thing is the family, and she's you can promise a lively talk from her. And then for those who just don't want to hear a woman talking, but would rather listen to a celibate priest, we'll have Father Spencer Howe up against her in a different breakout room, and Father is he's the chaplain of the Chesterton Society, and one of the great Chestertonian priests in the world. But he'll be talking about uh, another angle on Chesterton and Saint Francis. The juggler of God, the tumbler of God, sees the world upside down, and it'll be profound and theological, and you'll obviously come out of there a holier person.
Mm.
Then Joe, why don't you talk about the next two breakout sessions?
Yeah, so that's the first, and these things happen in parallel, so you kind of have to choose your adventure, choose your path, and go to the room. After that, we'll have one on the Chesterton Schools Network from kind of a personal perspective. That's Kathy Kirsten speaking about just how she finds the Chesterton Schools Network, the Chesterton Educational Solution, uh, being that key that fits the lock of the world, to borrow that Chestertonian analogy. This is the solution to so much. If people are panicking about society and feeling like we're headed in the wrong direction, uh, you can shout about it on Twitter and see where that gets you, or you can do something about it, and that's what the Chesterton Schools Network is doing. So that's what she'll be speaking to. And then Haley Stewart, actually, I'll hand that off to Gretel. And I know that we've interviewed her, or you did
Yeah.
previously on the podcast. She's a wonderful writer.
Yeah, so she's, if you don't know, she's just written, I think she's finished it now, a series of really sweet and very well written and very fun children's books about mice who live under the floorboards of G.K. Chesterton's house. So if that doesn't get you, I don't know what will, but I'm absolutely buying them for my kids. Maybe in a year or two when my oldest is old enough, but I've enjoyed them. But they're detective stories, and we kind of are bringing her in to talk more broadly about detective stories. So as we know, our dear friend Chesterton wrote a lot of detective stories. So she's going to help us unpack some of those. It's going to be fun. It's good breakout sessions when you look at it and you're like, I can't choose this. I'm going to have to run between the rooms. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so in addition to that, I'll just point out that the conference, with all that great content, you might be thinking, oh, this is something I can't miss. Uh, but like Ron Popeil in the old TV infomercials, wait, there's more. There is more to this than just the talks. A Chesterton conference really is a coming together of community. The very first one I attended back in, 2007. I'll never forget the first Chestertonian that I encountered, Dr. Peter Floriani. Uh, I said, "This is just an amazing thing," and he leaned over to me and he goes, "You know why that is, don't you?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "It's the inn at the end of the world, right?" It's Chris
Mm.
Check has said something similar. It's kind of a little preview of heaven. This is the just the cor ad cor loquitur, the heart speaking to heart, the community um, of friendship that it just can't be found anywhere else. So I highly recommend people coming. There's also plenty of sacramental opportunity. We'll have night prayer from the Liturgy of the Hours each day. We have an opening mass, closing mass, availability for confessions on both the opening and the closing day. In addition to the fellowship, we'll be praying the rosary at times in community. So, uh, and then just wonderful meals, opportunities to see people. And if you register, which you can do at chesterton.org/conference, register today. Uh, when you arrive, you'll be getting a welcome packet, and we'll have items from our sponsors in there. Word on Fire has said they'll be providing a copy of Bishop Aaron's book to attendees. So just a wonderful opportunity to meet people, to meet these wonderful speakers, and to enrich your life and grow closer to St. Francis of Assisi, G.K. Chesterton, and our Lord Jesus Christ. So please do join us in Minneapolis this summer.
Amen.
And you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity, Dale, to make one last pitch. You know, these conferences are challenging to put on. Another thing that comes up in Chesterton's biography of St. Francis of Assisi is the ideal of chivalry and the ideal of the knight, and how Francis, we don't necessarily think of the peaceful monk as following in this tradition of knighthood, and yet he does. And we here at the Society have our own core of knights who are also holy fools for Christ, who see value in what we're doing, and like Francis of Assisi, give of themselves to build the church and to make it happen. And so I would just encourage everyone, if you're as excited as we are about the great ideas that the Society fosters through the conference and the rest of our work, consider becoming a knight. Consider supporting us with a monthly gift. You can visit chesterton.org/knights to do that. And even if you can't come in at the level of a knight, consider maybe prayerfully contributing any amount per month. Every bit helps, and all of that goes towards that mission we share in common with Francis, that he received from Christ, to rebuild the church and to make it a fitting representation in the world of what God has to offer. So please consider that. Sorry, Dale, I'm monopolizing the time here, but I thought it was worth.
No, you're doing such a good job. I'm enjoying listening to you, Joe. In fact, I'm thinking maybe I should up my support.
Well,
there you go.
I'll take your credit card after the call. Yeah.
Convince me.
Well, do you have any final thoughts, Dale? Any last persuasive words here?
Well, every year we say it honestly every year that this was the best conference ever. But this year, it sounds like it's going to be the best conference ever.
It really does, yeah.
So I'm very excited. Of course, the one other thing I have to add is that I'm happy to host it this year back in my hometown. The conference used to be in the Twin Cities for many years. We took the show on the road. This is a rare homecoming because we'll be back on the road next year again. But come see me in my own backyard. And you also get to visit Chesterton Academy, the first Chesterton school. So,
yeah, historic moment there. Don't miss it.
Absolutely. Well, it all comes full circle, back where it all began. This is the home base of
yes.
the Chesterton movement here that we're building. And so we just invite you to become a part of it. Again, visit chesterton.org/conference to register today, even if you can't make it in person, which you should. But if you can't, you can even join us online if you're abroad and unable to make it. Please communicate with us in that way. That would be really special as well. And so, Dale, I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to chat with us today, and I'm sure all of our listeners and viewers appreciate it.
Well, I sure hope I can convey the enthusiasm that we have for this conference. It's a truly wonderful event. I certainly hope to see you all there in person in July.
Amen. And thank you, Gretelyn, once again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. It's lots of fun.
And for Uncommon Sense, I am Joe Grabowski. Thank you for watching, tuning in, listening. Please give us that like, give us that subscribe, share this with your friends, encourage them to tune into this podcast each week on Tuesdays. And please join us for the conference and bring a friend to that, because as we know, Chesterton is always better with friends. Until next time, God bless.